Hi, I'm Lauren Epstein. Welcome to another episode of You're Hired. Today, we are going to talk about military transitions. And in our culture, in American culture, for the last 16, 17 years, we've been fighting wars around the world, several wars at a time. And with wars come war fighters. A lot of the soldiers that join the military go in for 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, some for the full 20 or more, but often they leave before their retirement. And right now, we are facing a large number of warfighters who are leaving the services and need to get back into society, finding jobs, good jobs that leverage their skills, leverage their abilities, and are offering them an opportunity to kind of pick up where they left off in their lives. Last year, we did a show on military transitions, and we're really fortunate to have somebody from the Military Officers Association and one of our returning guests, Brendan Devine. Brendan is a former active duty Marine officer. He came to me last summer when he just left Japan and wanted to leave the service, and we did this show. And out of the show that we did with the 3 or 4 of us, Brendan got a job. And now he's about to take another job. So we thought, let's do this show again and maybe bring back some of our guests and have some new guests so that those of you who are listening who know people who are in the military that are considering transitioning out in the next few months or weeks or in the coming years, have a resource and have some tools to help them make that transition. So, when I understand today, this year, 170,000 warfighters will be looking for work this year, leaving the military, getting back into the commercial economy. So I want to introduce my guests. With me today, we have returning guest Brendan Devine. Brendan is a former active duty Marine officer. He separated from the Marines in June of 2016. During his 13 years of service, he filled a variety of operational and support staff positions in the United States and overseas. He's currently consulting to the Marine Corps to support the relocations of tens of thousands of Marines in the Pacific. Brendan is a returning guest. Welcome to the show, Brendan.
Thank you, Lauren.
With me today, I have Jim Carman, who served as a U.S. Navy pilot and also commanded squadron and air wings. He also served as Assistant National Security Advisor to the Vice President of the United States. After his military career, he flew for American Airlines, so he could have been your pilot at some point, and later served as a career and talent management consultant with Right Management. Right now, he's the Vice President of Member Support at the Military Officers Association of America. Jim has also completed the Senior Executive Training Program at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lauren. Honored to be here with you.
And with us today, we have a new guest, also Captain Gregory Procaccini. He is an active duty Marine engineer with 11 years of service. He's been with the Marine Corps Systems Command in Quantico for the past 4 years as the project officer for the modernized M9 Armored Combat Earth Mover, which I'm sure is really big and moves Earth. He has been deployed to Haiti, Afghanistan, Africa, and most recently with Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve in Kuwait. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it.
Glad that you're here, and you're currently active duty.
Yes,
and
correct.
You're going to be transitioning soon.
Yes, my end of active service date is 1 July.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have you talking about that experience.
Okay.
And then on the phone, I have another wonderful returning guest from one of my favorite companies, military.com. Karen Childress has 20 years in the human capital industry, with the last 12 at monster.com and military.com. So for those of you who don't know, monster.com bought military.com, which is great for both because it broadens the reach of jobs and candidates. Today, she is the National Director of Veteran Recruitment and Media Strategy. Karen travels the nation leading small groups of media experts as they coach, cajole, and support the best employers to find the right people. She inspires conversations by telling the military.com story in an impactful and meaningful way. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you.
And you can hear us okay?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Great. Awesome. So, Jim, I thought we'd start with you because, you're working for an association that is kind of one of the associations at the forefront is supporting veterans as they transition. What are you seeing right now?
Well, the Military Officers Association is 355,000 current and former military officers with a commitment to never stop serving. And the ways that we continue to serve after our military service concludes is with a very active government relations operation on Capitol Hill that works to educate and inform members of Congress on the unique needs of the military community. And we also have a couple of practice areas that serve the entire military community, specifically in career transition, in financial education, and in military caregiver support. And focusing first on the career transition piece of that portfolio, there are an awful lot of fine people leaving military service. Lauren mentioned about 170,000, which is a little more than in a typical year. But what we hear from employers is that oftentimes transitioning military people have a little trouble telling their story and relating their military experiences, what I'll call the essential skills or the soft skills, team building, coalition building, being a good listener, being a good leader. They have a hard time relating that to skills that can add value in the workplace. So my team and I spend a lot of time helping people with their self-marketing strategies. It begins with resume. It continues with information interviews, learning about opportunities, exploring possibilities in the private sector. And then when they start to get some traction for their job search, we help them with interview preparation and negotiation support. It's very rewarding work.
That's awesome. That's great. And Karen, what are you seeing? I mean, you're also at the forefront. I mean, you're doing work with how many resumes and how many candidates rather are in the military.com database?
Yeah, so we tackle the problem from the opposite side of the paradigm, which is to support the employers in their quest to hire veterans. We have about 26,000 new resumes being added to the database each month that are coming from either self-identified veterans or military spouses.
Right. Wow, that's a lot. And what's the demand now for folks looking to hire veterans?
There's a lot of effort being placed on creating veteran employment programs by Fortune 1000 and on employers. It's become a primary focus, looking at their ability to focus on mission success, integrate into workforces, leadership potential. But many employers are finding that veteran candidates can be an important resource for talent in their organization.
Okay. Well, Brendan, I want to kind of hear your perspective. So before you transitioned out, what was on your mind about getting back into the workforce or getting into the workforce? Because you'd been out for 13 years.
I'd say first and foremost, like Jim said, is trying to figure out how to translate what I'd been doing over the previous 13 years and put that in terms, civilianize my resume, so to speak, to take everything I'd done, all the different jobs I had worked on and staffs and leadership positions and things like that, and put them into terms that when it lands on a employer's desk, it doesn't have any familiarity with how that stuff works. It speaks to them in a language they can understand. So that was my primary focus. A lot of the major questions had already answered themselves as far as I knew I was coming back to the D.C. area. I knew the D.C. job market was pretty fertile with respect to veterans coming out and people looking for. People here would have a higher understanding of what we've done than people in other parts of the country. So doing that research stuff, figuring out where I was going and knowing stuff about the job market, I focused on that. But my main focus was saying, I went through several iterations of resume writing, trying to get something that read well to a prospective employer.
And what did you do to get the right resume?
I leveraged many different people. I used some OA resources. They have some resume review resources I used. I hired paid for a resume writing service. What
did you use?
It was the one you recommended. I can't remember the
Top Resume.
Yeah, Top Resume. They did good work, but I could tell just from the products I got back from them, they didn't have much familiarity with what the language I was speaking. So they did some edits that I had to go back and change because they kind of took the essential meaning out of what I was writing because they didn't know what the military speak was. But I got a pretty good product from them. And then through several months of that and sending it out to people that I knew, having them take a look at it, which having a network is essential. You need to start building your network.
And when did you start building your network?
I started 6 to 8 months out. I started kind of reaching out to people. I started getting active on LinkedIn. I started talking to people I knew in the area and kind of feeling out the job market and talking to people that I knew that had separated from the military or neighbors, friends, things like that, and getting connected to people. I think if you get inside 6 months and you haven't started focusing on this stuff, you're probably behind the power curve. You need to start at least 6 months out. Start working your network. And I mean, I'll be honest. Aside from the employment opportunity I got from being on the show, every other opportunity that's presented itself over the past 8 or 9 months has presented itself through my network. Somebody I knew had either contacted me directly or someone they knew contacted me with a job opportunity.
So your network was critical, making sure your resume was properly written. Was there anything else that you focused on?
No, I mean it takes some effort to figure out what you want to do. I mean, knowing, having been in the military for a number of years, there's not a lot of latitude of what you can do. I mean, there's a very small, selection of jobs you can take, and kind of figuring out, well, now that I'm out, what do I want to do with the next 30 years of my employment life. So I focused on program and project management because I knew that was something that my experience led itself to. And I got my PMP certification. I was able to translate what I'd done.
Did you get the PMP before you left?
No, I got it afterward. So I started preparing for it before I left.
Yeah. So PMP is project management professional, and it's a course that you can take, and
yes,
it's valuable. A lot of defense contractors like to have it.
No,
they need it when they get contracts from the government.
Yeah. It's the most widely recognized project management certification out there, and they have professional development after you get it that you have to do to keep your skill set up. And it's my current position is I'm actually using that skill set, so it is valuable. There are some kind of changing happy to glads you have to go through to translate what you did in the military into their vocabulary, because they have a unique vocabulary. But once you do that, it's pretty helpful.
Now, Karen, military.com has a really interesting feature, is that you have a tool that converts military resumes into non-military resumes. Is it like a magic wand?
Well, it's not exactly a magic wand, but it can certainly be effective, and it focuses in on hard skills today. The version of the tool today focuses on hard skills, and it allows you to use your MOS code, rank, branch of service, collateral duties, military training and education, plus civilian skills and civilian education to do what we call a military skills translation, to align those details that I just described against open jobs at employers today. So it allows you to take that information and do a job search. And we're very excited about the next iteration of this solution, which will incorporate in the soft skills, some of those leadership qualities, and also will allow you to take a better understanding, and Brendan mentioned this at the beginning, of understanding who you are, what you want to do, and the type of positions that you'd be interested in, and blends those together to help you really find your fit into the function at an employer.
And when is that coming out?
They'll be ready next quarter.
Next quarter, so in, where are we? January, February, March,
July.
April, May, June. So July?
Yes, in July.
In July. Great. Awesome. Well, we'll stay tuned for that. That'd be kind of cool. And so what else would you have recommended to Brendan, aside from some of the, I think, great things, right? Building out your network. That's a key place to get work. And having your resume set and checking around with people. What else would you have recommended to Brendan do to make sure that he got the job that he got? Which was through you, by the way.
Well, that's awesome. I think there's 2 additional points that are becoming important in a veteran's job search today. The first is branding. And the ability to know who you are, the industry that you want to work in, to recognize your value that you bring to employers, to give you the ability to tell your own story. And as Brendan mentioned, as the professional resume writer worked on his resume, it took out some of the essential qualities that made him so valuable. So brand yourself to be able to tell your own story, and then have a resume that reflects each version of that story. So the version of the story that makes you a project manager should have a resume, and the version of the story that makes you a operations professional should have its own resume. That's the first piece. And the second piece, very similar to networking, but networking with additional purpose, and that is the concept of mentorship. There are several platforms that have developed recently, one specifically targeting veterans called Veterati, which will allow you to connect with a mentor.
I'm sorry, I apologize, Karen. Can you repeat that? It got broken up.
Sure. There is a mentorship platform that exists today specifically for veterans. It's called Veterati.
Oh, Veterati. That's what we couldn't hear. How do you spell Veterati?
Veterati, Veterati.
Oh, okay. Veterati.com?
Veterati.com.
Okay.
And the idea of Veterati is that it allows a veteran to connect with potential mentors. It builds from the LinkedIn profile. So it helps to connect you with potential mentors based on that LinkedIn profile that you've developed for yourself. And you can network in Veterati with those that are in your industry to offer you advice and guidance about how to move into the industry that you're looking to become employed. It's like networking, but with activity, with real, meaningful human interaction.
Oh, that's really cool. So also with us today, we have Captain Gregory, oh man.
That's okay. Procaccini.
I'm
Not a problem.
going to write it down phonetically. So Greg, you're currently in the military.
Yes.
And what are you thinking? I mean, like, you've got this impending separation in 2 months, and are you nervous? Are you
Absolutely. Like Brad mentioned a few times about the timeline associated to your impending separation, the steps that are required for you to separate. Transition readiness seminar is one of them. All of us in uniform are required, at least that I'm aware of. You have to take a transition seminar in order for you to check out of your respective command and service. So the class that I took at Quantico, it was a joint class. You had a member of every service in it. For the most part, it was mostly Marines in there, whether they were retiring or separating for whatever reason. As part of that, a lot of the things that Brad mentioned, resume building and how to do the process for exiting service, translating your resume into something that civilian companies will understand. No more acronyms or spell them out. So people have the capability of understanding exactly what you're talking about. Because a lot of times we talk in acronyms and can do it at a drop of a hat. But somebody in the civilian services, civilian companies are just not going to understand that. And I've been going through that for the past 6 months, starting from zero from the class to where I am now. And if I were to put it in a percentage, I'd be right about the 80%. I've gone through all the resume building, both for a civilian resume and a federal resume. During the transition class, the instructors will state if you want to go into government service, there is a specific resume format that you need to follow. It's different from what you're going to submit to civilian companies. I was unaware of that, so I learned that at the course, and through MOAA, I got some advice and tips to make sure I'm including what is required for both a civilian and a federal resume. And I also worked through 2 other companies that assist veterans in the process for separating and going through submitting the resumes and getting to the point where they actually get hired.
Yeah, we did a show a while ago with Corliss Jackson, who was local, and she helps people get federal jobs. And some of the things that we learned was that when you build a resume for a government job, it actually has to have the words that are in the job description, because the hiring manager is not looking at the resume. It's an HR person that may not even know who the hiring manager is. And so they need to see those words in order to think that you are good for the job. In the commercial sector where I recruit, I can infer stuff and pass your resume along, or I can get a sense of what it is that you do. But in the government space, it's not so much so. In fact, currently I'm working for the United States Forest Service, and when we knew the hiring freeze was occurring, we set up a system. Actually, I came up with a strategy to hire veterans because we have a special authority. A lot of government agencies will have these hiring authorities, which give them the ability to kind of hire directly for a particular reason. And one of them is veterans. So we had a veterans hiring authority, and in a 5-day period, we hired 38 people. And the way we did it was that there are about 20 nonprofits that have email lists to veterans, including through the Department of Labor, and they sent our job out to about 650,000 people, which got us those 38. We could have had more, but a lot of the resumes weren't written correctly. They were, GS 4, 5s, and 6s, and I know a lot of the folks we could have hired all that we needed, but people just didn't write their resumes in the correct way. So it sounds like the military sent you this class exactly when Brendan was saying, which is about 6 to 8 months before your separation. Is that right?
That just happens to be the time frame that I attended. You can sign up for certain classes during whenever they're available at the area that you're going to be based out of. For Quantico, we're centrally located, so people from all over the region attended that transition seminar.
So, Jim, he's right here. What advice can we give to Greg to get him through? Like, it's going to be okay. Should we hold his hand?
Well,
Pat him on the back.
Greg is doing a lot of the right things, and I'm really glad that we were able to support Greg as his transition unfolded. And the thing that we find, a lot of people in career transition are spending way too much time in front of computers. When you're in front of a computer, you're connecting with what I'll call the formal job market. And in my experience as a career management consultant in my current role and in earlier roles, about 25% of people in transition are going to get a job through Ladders this or Monster that, or maybe the job bank on LinkedIn, which is a very fine job bank.
Don't let Karen hear you.
Oh, okay. I'll whisper next time. But
No, that's not true. I'm a fan of LinkedIn. It has a lot of great resources.
But it's really important, I think, for someone in transition to connect with people. I tell people to load the Starbucks app because you're going to buy a lot of cups of coffee as you begin the business of connecting with people, to learn about opportunities in the private sector, and also to set the stage to generate internal pull for your candidacy. Even if you float to the top for a very competitive position, it's very important to have a couple people inside the organization who can give you some insight on culture, expectations, what they might be looking for that's not necessarily spelled out in the job description. So I would remind Greg to suspend judgment and consider a lot of alternatives that might not initially be appealing. Maybe the price point is a little bit low. Maybe the location is not perfect. But then as you get into the process, you find you really like these people, and it could be very rewarding work. And if you've done some good network development, you've connected with people inside those organizations, so you'll be able to be your best on interview day. Organizations are probably going to do 5 or 6 live interviews for every one hire that they make. And so you can't have any bad days. I tell candidates every interview is the Super Bowl, and you've got to be as prepared as you can for interview day.
That's good advice. So, Brendan, now that you've made the transition, what would you tell Greg? Because you've changed jobs again, right?
I did, yeah. So a
better job.
It is a better job. It's more in line with my skills and experience. I was recruited for a position less than 6 weeks after I did the show. It was through Karen sending my resume out, and it landed on somebody's desk, and they kind of cold called me with this position. And I'd gotten some advice from people, which turned out to be pretty good from my perspective, was to don't waste too much time looking for the perfect position when you come out of the military. If you get something that presents itself that seems like it's decent and the pay's all right, you're probably better off taking it as kind of a bridge position to help you make that transition from military to civilian life, which this position did for me. I ended up doing work that I wasn't enamored with it. But the pay was about in my band, what I was looking for, and it was still supporting the Department of Defense. But about 6 months in, this other position presented itself, which was directly in line with what I had been doing, focused on the Pacific, focused on areas that I had experience with, focused on program and project management. So it was one of those things where I couldn't really pass it up. So I changed jobs. I began this new position back at the beginning of April. And I'm working at the Marine Corps headquarters at the Pentagon, and it's I'm pretty satisfied with.
And what are you doing?
I am helping manage. We're doing a pretty significant force realignment in the Pacific right now. We're transitioning about 15,000 Marines off the island of Okinawa to other places in the Pacific area, primarily the island of Guam. So we're in the process of building a new Marine Corps base on the island of Guam. And then later on down the road, we'll send a few thousand to Hawaii. There's some other. We've got a force that rotates in and out of Australia now. That's probably going to get plussed up to a larger number. But there's an office in the Pentagon that's the program management office for this organization, for this whole effort. So they brought me in, not me personally, but they brought in. KPMG, which is one of the big four accounting firms, they brought them in as part of a larger Department of the Navy accounting and auditing effort to help them refine their program management controls. So I'm supporting that team. I'm working for a smaller consulting firm as a subcontractor, but it's much more rewarding work, I think, for me. But shifting back to what I'd say to Greg is, it's you may be nervous right now. You may not sure what the future is going to look like, but it's something's going to happen. I mean, people are out there as long as you're doing everything that has been talked about already. Crafting your resume right, selling yourself and your story, and doing your networking and figuring out what it is that you want to do. I would say within 6 months something's gonna come up.
Well, I'm actually when I say the 80%, I've done exactly what you just said over the past 4 months to get me where I am now. The tailoring of resumes, making a network. I've a LinkedIn profile. I've attended some of the events MOAA hosted over the past couple of months to expand my network. Handed out those business cards and resumes, and did some handshaking and pressing of the flesh to make sure that I'm selling myself, because as a Marine, and those of us who are in service, we're not used to doing that. It's not about me. It's about my guys. It's about the mission. Now it's the other way around. It's about me. I'm not used to that, and I had to take some time to really get over that hurdle to try and sell myself, both on paper and in person, to make sure that I have a plan to do something after 1 July.
And Greg, I remember this like yesterday. I came off of active duty in the late 90s, and my last day of active duty was the 30th of June. And I started doing the networking thing really hard the early part of the year, and probably by the 1st or so of April, I had about 15 applications out, mostly in the commercial aviation sector and in the consulting sector, which is where I decided to focus. And nobody was calling. And nobody was writing, and I was really getting concerned about this. And so the 30th of June came and went, my last day in uniform. There was some sort of family thing over the 4th of July, the details of which I can't remember because my mind was a million miles away. And then on the Monday after the 4th of July, as though somebody threw a switch, I had 2 nibbles. It was almost like they were waiting for me to be separated, and then I was okay to talk to. And both of those ended up with very nice job offers.
Over the past few weeks, I've had a fair amount of phone interviews. I've done one in person with a company in Pennsylvania. I have 2 scheduled over the next couple of weeks in person after going through the iterations and steps to go through the staff in a company. You get reviewed one time, then you get another phone call with more people, and then you'll get set up for an in-person. As I've gotten closer to my EAS, the ball has rolling down the hill. It's gotten EAS, End of Active Service.
End of Active Service.
Yes, that acronym is service-wide. So as I've got, like I said, I've gotten closer. A lot more has started to get on my plate. The further out I was, the less interaction I had all the companies are going through the same process and time frames. They're looking for somebody really 30 to 45 days out of what they need to have on hand to execute their jobs or whatever the task is in their company, whether it's civilian or in the government service, because I'm applying to both. Active programs or companies that are supporting the Defense Department or just regular civilian companies. In the military, we don't put all our eggs in one basket. That's the same thing I'm doing now. I've sent my resumes, both civilian and federal, to civilian companies and DoD supporting agencies.
That's awesome. I'm actually looking at Greg's LinkedIn page right now, and it looks awesome. You did a great job. Good picture.
I've had a lot of advice.
Did you?
Mentors. You mentioned mentorship.
Yeah.
Luckily, with my command, with Marine Corps Systems Command in Quantico, a lot of the personnel there are retired military, and I've gotten a lot of advice from my supervisors and those I interact with every day to get me in the right direction from what I believed I was going towards, and I've been lucky with having the type of support from the command to get me to where I am, and it's helped me out a lot, as well as friends I've met over the past 10, 11 years in service, being deployed with Joint Task Forces with other members, other services. Lots of advice. Good advice.
My name's Lauren Epstein. You're listening to You're Hired. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. Thanks for listening to our show. If you're interested in getting on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or follow us on Facebook at You're Hired. And you can join my meetup where we teach interview skills at Interview Skills to Get the Job at meetup.com. Again, I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Welcome back to You're Hired. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. With me today is Brendan Devine, Jim Carman from MOA, and Captain Gregory Procaccini. Did I get it? I got it. Awesome. And also from military.com, Karen Childress. Karen, I wanted to go back to you and ask, what other advice could you give to our listeners and to Greg as far as what military.com can support them with? Obviously, there's the resume component, but explain about how military.com works for folks.
Military.com is a digital community that supports active duty, transitioning, retired, former military folks and their spouses. And so it offers all types of resources to a person as they go through transition. And of course, among them is career resources. So within military.com, there is a section where employers who are interested in hiring veterans provide a profile of themselves. It's a great place to interact with organizations that are specifically looking for veterans. And my advice in that area is many companies are specifically looking to hire veterans, especially those that have made commitments through the Veterans Job Mission or the former joining forces. And as part of support of those commitments that they've made, they've put in place either dedicated veteran recruitment teams or dedicated veteran recruitment resources. So, Greg, as you're looking out at employers in the civilian space especially, seek out their veteran recruitment program. So companies like Comcast, like Verizon, Home Depot, Amazon, many of them have channels to enter into their employment section that are specific for veterans. And here's the reason you want to enter into that channel. Most of those organizations offer dedicated recruiters, so humans that can review your resume as opposed to the technology that would be reviewing your resume if you went in through the standard applicant tracking system. The average resume, Lauren, you know this, that gets 2 or 3 seconds of a look. And so these companies, by offering humans to review veterans' resumes, they're giving them a longer look, they're doing the inferring, and many of them, Verizon, a great example, they actually have veteran advocates that when they read your resume, they help determine which part of their business you best fit into and will market you out to that part of their own business. So military.com offers a page that will highlight veteran employers that are targeting veterans and will give you that channel into their veteran recruitment program. Many of those companies offer skills translators, but also just information about their company, and they do a little bit of that translation for you. They tell you the positions that they think you will fit into or that they have seen other veterans be successful in. The other thing that I wanted to say is that Brendan's story is not unique. Turning over within that first year is actually quite common, and I think he mentioned really the primary reason why, either fear or lack of understanding about the employment marketplace will cause a veteran to take that not quite perfect job the first time. And in Brendan's case, it turned out to be the right path. It gave him the civilian experience, and it gave him the flexibility to wait for the perfect job. But for some veterans, it's about not understanding what it is that they're looking for in their employer and seeking out companies that are specifically targeting veterans. They've done a good job being able to articulate why they're hiring veterans and helping the veteran make that connection. And the goal there is to increase not only the number of veterans that they hire, but the retention of those veterans.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Jim in a second, but at the U.S. Forest Service, government agencies give extra points to veterans who apply. And so, Jim, what other organizations give preference? Because, I mean, I can look at my friends' LinkedIn pages and see where they're getting hired. What places would you recommend?
Well, the U.S. government really has a very impactful program to hire veterans. About 31% of all federal hires in 2016 were veterans. This is a huge opportunity for people coming off of military service. And the government departments with the most hires were transportation and defense and veterans affairs. All of them were well north of 30% in terms of percentage of hires that are veterans. So I think those are opportunities that all veterans coming off of active duty should take advantage of. And depending on your particular situation, there are hiring authorities in place that allow a veteran to get some additional points in the federal application process. The federal process is very lockstep in order to ensure that everyone is treated fairly, and those extra points can break you out of a herd of rivals and get you the interview. And then in my experience, when a veteran gets an interview, they present to companies very, very well because we tend to have good people skills. We tend to be able to work well with a wide variety of individuals based on all the individuals that we worked well with in military service, and we generally do a pretty good job of telling our stories in ways that leave an impression. Employers love to hear stories because it's so easy to remember the story, and that's a wonderful way for you to make an impression during interview day.
Yeah, just a plug for myself. So I do a lot of interview skills training, and one of the workshops I do is on how to tell your narrative. It's the most important skill I think you can ever learn as far as being in an interview, is to take what it is that you've done and share it in a way that you're not telling someone directly what it is that you do, but through the story of what you actually did, they infer your ability. So the example I give is, I'm a manager at an Apple store, and I got a call from the truck driver one night, and the truck was broken down 300 miles away. So I got my team together, we got in our cars, we drove out to Pennsylvania to the truck, loaded up all the Apple stuff, and drove it back, and the next day we opened up. Now, I didn't say that I was resourceful or creative or a great leader, but in hearing that story, you would make those things up. So when you're doing interview practicing, when you're thinking about what am I going to tell someone, you need to go back into the things that you've done and create that kind of short, snappy narrative that makes someone think, oh, wow, this guy's got some skills that I could use. And a plug for the U.S. Forest Service is that half of the jobs at the U.S. Forest Service are outdoors, and a lot of soldiers work outdoors. And it's they have a lot of great opportunities for people who are looking to transition into positions where you might be in really, really small groups in kind of distant places. There are forests where there's only 5 or 10 people working. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. I think it's great to point out the federal government. Where else can we say? What other places? And I appreciate what you said, Karen, about Home Depot and those other companies. Where else could folks look if they were going to say, well, check out these kinds of companies?
Well, some of the companies, in my experience, that have done a really good job with veteran hiring, they have veterans involved in their interview teams, because we tend to hire people who look and act and sound a little bit like us, even though we'll deny it, but we sort of gravitate to people that remind us of ourselves. So the best companies will have veterans in their interview teams. They will have a mentor network in place where veterans can find individuals within the organization who can tell them the nuances of the culture, which is important when you're a new person. And they will also provide a nice onboarding program, which will help accelerate your acclimation into the environment. And the companies, in my experience, that do a real good job of that are General Electric and First Data and Bank of America. Karen mentioned Comcast, which has an excellent reputation in the private sector. Home Depot has a very effective program to connect with and hire veterans. And I'm not just talking about the greeter inside the door. I'm talking about logistics positions, IT positions, heavy management positions that carry a lot of responsibility and a lot of authority. Those are some of the companies that come to mind.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Yeah, so Greg, what are you thinking?
I appreciate everyone's comments. I'm actually really in line with what Brad is doing, because with Systems Command, we do project and program management for Marine Corps programs of record, procuring equipment, and that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. And that's how I've been attacking the avenues and the companies that I've been going through and looking at with possible employment, making sure that I tell them my story, where I've been, what I've done recently, as well as in the past. And well, at least we Marines are pretty good at telling stories, and most of the time just have to tell us to stop telling you stories.
Stories that we can share in public, or these?
Both. Both. Preferably at the bar if you'd like to, but we're pretty good at that. And I've been doing that for the last 6 months, telling my story, how I've done what I've done and how I've gotten to where I am, and selling myself. Because the 30-second elevator speech is something that's been hammered into those of us that are transitioning to sell ourselves. And I've been doing that over the last, like I said, 6 months. So I've gotten some practice in doing that. And it's been helpful to date. And hopefully over the next few weeks with the in-person interviews I've got scheduled, things will go well. And with the skills and things I've stated, both in black and white and in person, will hopefully go well.
Yeah, and Jim, it's been different than when you left in 1990.
Oh, very much so. There are a lot more veterans in transition. And also, I was fortunate to serve as an officer. And officers tend to bring a little bit more of a network with them into the service. By and large, we have undergraduate degrees. We have career counselors at our undergraduate universities that as alumni we can engage to help us. Officers tend to have a pretty good network, but sometimes the people that we serve with need our help to make connections, to help identify their greatest strengths. And Laura and I work with a couple of fine people at Military Officers Association who will not be happy with me if I don't remind your listeners that of all the people that are transitioning out of the military this year, 62% of them are married. And military spouses have very high unemployment rates. And oftentimes when a spouse transitions out of uniform, they're making a transition and they're looking for a job, and they may be coming off of a situation where they didn't have very many employment opportunities because of the remoteness of where their spouse was stationed, or the fact that their spouse was continuously on deployment and they were basically a single parent. So for the employers in your audience, when you meet someone who was a military spouse and is now trying to break back into the job market, be tolerant of what I'll call black holes in resumes, where they were not working for a period of years because they didn't have any meaningful opportunity, and be attentive to their volunteer experiences. most military spouses have extensive volunteer resumes because they provide so much of the horsepower to get things done on the bases. All bases rely extensively on volunteers. Many of them are military spouses, and they have great experience leading teams, financial accounting, organizational skills. Think about military spouses as well as transitioning service members.
That's awesome advice. Karen, I wanted to ask...
Thank you, Jim.
I wanted to ask you, Karen, so what are some of the reasons that employers want to hire veterans? You must be hearing this from the customers that want to get access to them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I can tell you that it certainly goes beyond a feeling of it just being the right thing to do. Although there is an emotional appreciation for the work that the folks in our military do, it's much more than that. People transitioning from the military bring with them both the hard and soft skills required for the job market today. So on the hard skills side, people exiting the military are coming out with tangible experience. And in some industries, that experience can only be found inside the military. But for a lot of organizations, it's the combination of the hard and soft skills, the leadership, the tenacity, the mission success focus, the ability to come into an organization and operate during periods of change and still find a way to manage through that. And I appreciate Jim's comments about the military spouse and like he said, watching for black holes and watching for their volunteerism, but also remember that many of the soft skills that we attribute to the veterans may also apply to the military spouse. And something that's changed for me since a year ago when we did this interview, my husband has now moved into the transitional period himself. He'll have 21 years of active service as a Marine, and he's moving into the period of transitioning out into the civilian sector. So this will become a very real experience for me. And so I hope to bring my background to him, but also to learn from his experiences so I can give better advice to the veterans and to the employers that I speak with.
I hope you'll have him listen to the show.
I will. I'll be sure to do that.
His wife gives some really good advice.
Well, he talks about, like Brendan did, being concerned, being fearful, having joined the service at 18 and having all of his professional experience be in the Marine Corps. He's nervous about the civilian sector. And so I know that he is concerned for his ability to translate those skills. And he does have a wife that gives good advice, and so hopefully I'll be able to ease that fear for him a little bit.
He's richly blessed.
So I want to talk about hiring veterans from my perspective. So I love veterans. That's why I do this show and these kinds of shows. One of the things I've heard from veterans is that they want a mission, they want purpose, they want those things in their workplace, and I have to say, so do we all. So for those of you who are transitioning, the things that you want are not unique to you. Those of us who are human beings that have never served in the military seek those things in an employer, and they are hard to find. Having worked at a lot of different places, most places to work for are okay, but they're not going to have all the things that you're looking for. It is, as Brandon can attest, that he found a job that met his needs now, but was the bridge job, and even the job he has now may be, a bridge to the next job. One of the things that we've learned is that about 60% of the jobs that the students will have don't exist. People who are in elementary school, high school, those jobs just are not around. So it's really important to be flexible and have lots and lots of different abilities. And I think that you do get that in the military, fundamentally, right? It's not just they teach you the one thing that you're exposed to by the nature of the job, a lot of different situations, and have to adapt. And I think that's a critical thing, and not stop your education just because you're in a position to continue to educate yourself. I'm going to make a plug for a couple of great educational tools, but there's a site called lynda.com, and one of my favorites is YouTube. I had a washing machine that had a broken door, and I learned how to fix it just by, from the video. I mean, it was unbelievable. I would not think that I could do that. So there's a lot of ways that you can continue to advance your skills into things that you did not think that you would be doing, and to keep your eye out on the horizon for, what are the burgeoning careers? I mean, right now there's huge influx around green energy, solar, and other types of positions. But if you want to have a career, like a long-term career, you do need to kind of keep your eyes beyond just this year, next year, and the year after. You want to build those skills so that you have something long-term, because you're young. I mean, you seem like you're young. I mean, otherwise you're hiding it well, and you're going to be working for a while. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Brendan, Jim, Greg, and Karen, thank you so much. I hope that you get an opportunity to share the show with other veterans and people who will be transitioning in the future. Let's just kind of go around, and Brendan, if folks want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
You can get me. My email is brendan.devine, brendan.devine@gmail.com. That's probably the best place to get in contact with me.
And Jim?
JIMC, Jim C, at MOAA.org. We also do a series of career fairs, networking events designed to help the entire veteran community and the military spouse community.
Yeah, I can't recommend MOA enough. Go to MOA.org. Even if you're not in the military, check it out. It's a great resource. And Greg, how can folks reach out to you? Because there could be someone listening who has a job.
I'm also on LinkedIn. I can spell my last name, Procaccini, and my email address, gprocac571@verizon.net.
Awesome. And Karen, how can folks reach out to you at military.com?
Well, an easy way to do it would be to connect with me on LinkedIn, Karen Childress-Wiley on LinkedIn. And my email address is Karen.Childress, KARIN.CHILDRESS @monster.com.
And I can't thank Karen enough for coming back, I think, a third time now to be on our show. Thank you all. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. We'll see you next week on You're Hired.